I know what you're thinking, here we go again. Well, it isn't here we go again. This is a final, and it's fast. I still keep getting asked, and as long as I get asked, there are people that would like an answer. Might not be the answer they like, but it's the answer that I can give. And as always on this subject, this is what I do. Many other people do things in many other different ways. It's up to you to choose what suits you. Okay, so just fundamentally, my MSU fertilizer gets mixed up in there in a stock solution. It gets stored in the cool and the dark, which the manufacturer says is okay, and it'll be fine as long as you give it a hell of a good shake before you use it. So good shake it gets. That started off as RO water. It's had a sploop, which I'm hoping is around the 170, 180 mark. Should be something like that. Whether it was a good guess or not, we shall see. Okay, that's a TDS reading of 190. Now don't forget, there are two ways of fertilizing. You either use a fertilizer that's got everything in it, or you put it in its individual elements or some elements combined, and you do your own thing. That is relatively complicated, and I will put my hand on my heart and say, if you're going to go down that road, you need to know what you're doing. Don't play. You can end up messing things up. So a general well-balanced fertilizer makes life easy, but it does mean everything gets the same thing, which might not be exactly what you want for every single plant. I've got enough plants that I have to average it, so average it I do. Now I think with a reading like that, I'm going to take a guess that the pH is going to be around 6.6, maybe 6.7, but it should have dropped it down from its original 7. I'm getting good at this. So that's dropped the pH down to 6.6. That is a fraction outside the recommended range. And am I going to fiddle with it? Am I hell? It's staying exactly where it is. Now I'll say why. Okay? When I start watering, the very first plant I'm going to water is that one. What's it growing in? Moss. Yeah? When I pour the water all over that plant, and because I reuse water, which I will not recommend to anybody, but it's what I do, it's going to start to lower the pH gently. Because this is not old broken down moss, this is this year's moss, so it's pretty good stuff. So what started at 6.6, as I water the number of plants and I repeat the process, the pH is going to slowly drop. There's no dramatic drop, it's slow. And I've tested it, and if I water all of my mounted orchids, that will have dropped from where it started to about 5.9 or 6. Yeah? Now to get a lower pH and a higher pH, you know, to get a bit of an alternative, perhaps make a few more nutrients more available, yeah? What do I need to do? Well, absolutely nothing. All I need to do is every time I feed my mounted orchids, reverse the order. Yeah? Otherwise, the same plant gets the higher pH all the time, and the same plant gets the lower pH all the time. So I just reverse the order. I do them in a set order. All I do is do them the other way round. And then, you know, the plants that were last become first. Simple. That's it. That's what I do. The only exception is the Vander bucket. And that basically gets, the water gets refreshed when the RO unit's on the go. Takes half a day to fill that flipping thing with my little unit. And once it's full, I set up my feed level, which for my Vanders this time of year is around the 250 to 270 mark. It doesn't have to be exact. So if I overcook it a little bit, I'll add a bit more water because I don't want it too high, you know. So then I do that. And I know straight away that that will have brought the pH down to about 6.3, 6.4, yeah? And then I water my Vanders. And that water doesn't change that much, so that pH very rarely gets much lower than that. The only thing that ever goes in that bucket that lowers the pH seems to be the wooden baskets. Now maybe that's because they're storing some stuff up and it washes out. Maybe it's something to do with the wood, but whatever. But slowly but surely, as I use that water towards the end of its life, which is, like I say, is in between the RO unit coming out, it drops slightly. So although it might start around 6.3, 6.4, by the time it comes to its end of its life, and it'll have been used quite a bit by then, over and over again, it'll have dropped down below the 6 mark somewhere, depends how long. So that's it. I don't play. I just do that. That's what I do. And quite honestly, I don't see anything wrong. If things weren't growing well, I'd have another think. But fundamentally, they are. Now, you will get exceptions. You'll get a plant that grows its head off at a certain time of year and puts out so much growth, that feed level might be a bit low for it. Yeah? Or it might create a slight imbalance. You know, something that's growing like mad is going to be gobbling up the old nitrogen, you know, and there could be an imbalance for a while, but it'll settle down, it'll sort itself out. I'm not growing my orchids on a day-to-day basis. I grow them on an annual basis. And over a year, it'll all sort itself out. In my book, that's how I like to do things, because I can't overcomplicate it, because I can't be bothered, one, and when I can't be bothered, I get slapdash, and I don't enjoy it anymore. So I keep it as simple as I can. Works for me. In this environment, works for me. In my country, works for me. Yeah? You can vary that, you can play with it, you can do your own thing, totally your own thing if you like. You can chuck chicken manure on your orchids if that's what you choose to do. But if you play around with nutrients, especially at individual element levels, make sure you really, really know what you're doing. And if you do, well, good on you, because you'll probably get better results than I'm getting. But it's at individual plant level. I haven't got the time to muck about like that. I just haven't. If the whole place was going downhill in here, I'd stop and think again, but it's not. It's doing okay. New growth on a Cattleya type. Yeah? You see anything wrong with that new growth? It's fat, it's plump, it's got roots coming out the bottom of it like they're going out of fashion, and it's in sheath. And no buds yet, but soon. The other one has, the other side of the plant. You know, so, you know, oncidiums, putting up new growths, loads of new roots, and a flower spike on both sides of the pseudobulb. If that was all wrong, it wouldn't do that. It just wouldn't. So in the main, it's all going okay. And while it is, I'll stick to what I do. Now, I'm going to get asked, so I'll say, my Restrepias, Masdevallias and my Paphiopedilums, I feed at around 80 parts per million to 100. It's a low level feed. There really isn't much going on at that sort of parts per million. And again, I have to stop and think, well, hang on, because that lower level feed goes into pure RO water, the pH is going to start at around 6.7, 6.8. But what are they growing in? Moss and bark. As soon as I start pouring the water through them, that pH starts to drop at a faster rate because of the media. Yeah? So again, rather than give the same plant the water with the higher pH, I reverse the order. So it alternates. The ones in the middle probably get the same thing, but tough. That's the best I can do. Now today I did something different. I actually started up the top. Yeah, then I got the Restrepias out the way and did the Paphs, and then did the Restrepias last. Now normally I do them the other way round, Restrepias, Paphs, Masdevallias. So just changing the order round and taking in on board what's happening in my media when I pour the water through, you know, it's catered for in the main. And it's working okay. So if it's not broke, don't fix it. And somebody said, I can't wait to see how much extra light you get when the shade netting's off. Well, can you see the difference? The camera's going to play with the shot that I'm playing with now. But what are you looking at that you wouldn't have been looking at last week? Silhouettes. Why is it silhouetted? Because the camera cannot adjust enough. There is a fair bit more light coming through there today. The sun's quite bright out there today. It won't always be, it is the UK after all. But as you can see, that is quite filtered light, but through each individual hole on that shade netting it's direct light that lasts probably 10 to 15 seconds, because the way the sun moves it'll never be on the same spot on the same leaf for more than seconds. Sun is always moving, you'd be surprised how quick it moves. So yeah, extra light gradually, you know. And I've just had a look at the sun behind the tree, and it isn't right behind the tree. Excuse me, the shadow of the tree is down there at the moment, about 2 foot from the bottom. And obviously as the sun drops behind that tree, that shadow will gradually rise up as time goes on. And when that shadow gets up here, the other layer of shade netting can come off. But I don't know when that's going to be. I didn't write it down last year, but I know it's not yet. But the rate the sun's dropping down in the sky is probably at its fastest now. The day length shortening effect is sort of near its maximum or coming up to its maximum. So, you know, the day lengths are shortening at quite a dramatic rate, and as they do, the sun drops lower in the sky. And eventually I can take that end netting off. So that's where we are.